All right, folks, welcome in. It is the latest edition of College Basketball Coast to Coast in our Saturday night live recap show. I am the somewhat capable host, TJ Rives. I've got all kinds of help from analysts. I've got a seething Tyler Jones with me in here to talk what in the world happened to Rock Chalk Jayhawk here in a few moments. Jason Powers will be here a little later on, as well as Matt Zemek. Three of my guys, we love talking college basketball, the quartet of us, and we're aboard tonight in the aftermath of let's be honest, a great Houston comeback to win in double overtime for their upset win at Kansas. We just watched, if you were keeping track of it, we're doing this live here just before midnight Eastern time on this Saturday night, an Auburn-Tennessee game where the defense ruled the day. The offense struggled. Auburn hung on and won the game over Tennessee 53-51. We saw a Xavier fantastic game tonight and fantastic finish with UConn that they have won. There's a lot to get to on the program. So thank you for finding us. We're on the social media platforms of college basketball coast to coast. Check that out, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. That's where the show is. It's also in podcast form after the fact, the replay in podcast form, wherever you get podcasts, search College Basketball Coast to Coast. With all the promos out of the way, let me call in Tyler Jones of the Jones Report, his pod of Chat Sports, KU alum. My friend, I mean, like 3 different times I thought we were going to have a different conversation tonight about Kansas gutting out a win over one of the better teams in the country, their Big 12 rival Houston, but instead it's Houston that finally outlasted Kansas and won the game. So welcome in and give me some thoughts because I know you're still smarting a couple of hours later from what Houston did to your Jayhawks in Lawrence.
TJ, I am still here, even in spite of you tagging me in a tweet with the final score. How dare you, by the way? That was a bold strategy on your part, and I'm still here. So even with all that said, I said I would come on tonight. I'm a man of my word. Luckily, though, even though Kansas lost tonight, I will go to sleep, and by morning we are on to bigger and better things with the Kansas City Chiefs playing for the Lamar Hunt Trophy and a Super Bowl title appearance, Super Bowl championship appearance here in a few hours. So, hey, we'll move on to live to see the other day, but to put that in perspective, TJ, of what we witnessed tonight of Kansas's 92-86 loss, blowing not one, but 2 6-point leads at the end of regulation, at the end of the first overtime. That was the worst meltdown, the worst collapse in the Bill Self era at the University of Kansas.
Wow.
That's how bad that was. There was no excuse. There was no reason for Kansas to lose this game. And I heard Bill Self talking in the postgame about how, hey, we're proud of our guys that we hung in there with maybe the best team in the country without one of our starters and KJ Adams and all that. I don't want to hear it, Bill. I love you. I really do. But you had no excuse. There's no moral victory. There's nothing good that comes out of this. You had a 5-game winning streak going into tonight, and now all of it has gone for nothing. You seemed like you were turning a corner after coming back from down 14 against TCU the other night. I think this Kansas team's got a lot of soul searching to do right now.
No question that they let it get away. As you mentioned, not once, but twice, Tyler Jones, in this game. Up 6 with DeJuan Harris, the veteran guard at the line. What do we say? Fundamentally, you got to make your free throws. He misses not 1, but 2, and that opens the door for the immediate Houston 3. And then what was up with your Jayhawks? This is, I mean, I'm not going to batter you just to batter you, but we've got to dissect this a little bit. What was up with them over and over again, not being able to get the ball in bounds and fumbling away opportunities to maybe put the game away by not getting it in bounds, not getting it in the right guy's hand, not getting a shot off before the shot clock? This happened over and over again at the end of regulation and the overtime, and it opened the door for Kansas to tie it with the second 3 and eventually win the game in double OT.
It's so frustrating because this is what you would expect out of a team in November or maybe early December. But we're counting down the weeks to March now. We're just over a month or so away from the game's counting. And this team looked so far lost with you mentioned the free throws, 17 of 30 from the line tonight. The way they struggled to inbound the ball time and time again. I mean, and the other thing I'll say this too, when Badunga got fouled out after having hit the best night of his life, when he finished with 19 points and 7 rebounds, that's when this thing really felt like that this team didn't have much of a chance, because they were really feeding things through him. He was taking away some of the pressure off Hunter Dickinson, and then they had to go back to the 4-guard lineup, and they had no way to defend Houston on that end as well. Just all around, just very careless. To me, I felt like Kansas was the better team tonight, and that they did not. I don't think even Houston won this game. I think Kansas beat themselves.
Again, that's the voice of Tyler Jones live. If you're only hearing us on podcast form, if you're seeing us, thank you for doing so here on the live nightcap show. We love doing this on Saturday night. Such a wild day in college basketball. Tyler, we got so much to go over, but I got you here because you're kind of an open wound, and then I'm going to let you kind of move past it, have a little few hours of mourning and rest, and then get ready, as you mentioned, for the Kansas City Chiefs going for the three-peat in the AFC title game with the Buffalo Bills. Don't we have to credit Kelvin Sampson's team some, if not a lot, because he's got a veteran bunch. They made shots, including in the second overtime, making threes and making shots, because let us not forget, Kansas still had the early lead in the second overtime. So how much do we credit the Houston Cougars for that win?
I think Houston does deserve a ton of credit. Roberts was fantastic. He had 24 points. Uzan was great. He had 17. And I was talking to our buddy Deshaun Tate the other day on my podcast, The Jones Report. And Deshaun brought up an interesting point to me. He said that when he looks at this Houston team, that he wasn't sure if this team has enough offense. That can they do enough offensively to win those games in March? And this was not their best offensive night, and yet they still hit the clutch shots. They still scored 92 points, and that was with L.J. Cryer, their best player, only having 9 points tonight. So for me, as far as Houston goes, of being a team that's going to be a serious contender, a serious threat here in several weeks from right now, I saw what I needed to see. The question marks that I had, or maybe Deshaun had, when it came to Houston's offense. Look, this is a team they're not going to score 100 on you. But to me, what I saw from them was enough that says this Houston team has the offensive horsepower, even on what wasn't their best shooting night. They shot, 35 of 73 from the field tonight, that they can still do enough, even when L.J. Cryer wasn't necessarily on per se.
Yeah. Emmanuel Sharp hit big shots. The 6-year player, Roberts, was fantastic for them. Again, Kelvin Sampson's team, known for their defense, but they're making shots. They're making threes with this team, and they've beaten Kansas. All right, so we're monopolizing this recap show talking about that game. I would be remiss if I did not bring up the other action. All right, did you catch some of Auburn and Tennessee? And if you did, any thoughts on Auburn surviving? They were down late. They rallied. Questionable at the end of the game. Tennessee shot selection at the end of the game, didn't get a good shot on the second to last possession. Then after a timeout, down by 2, went for the 3 right away on the inbound with like 7 or 8 seconds left. I know there's a lot of murmuring as we do this live. In fact, it's building steam that Janai Broom, the All-American, All-Everything, big man in center, grabbed the loose ball, and then Tyler looked like he was doing something, auditioning for Dancing with the Stars. He took like 3 or 4 steps trying to get rid of the ball and launch it down to the other end of the floor to let the clock run out. They could have and maybe should have called him for traveling. It would have been Tennessee's ball with about 3 seconds left, down 2. Anyway, I've just described it for the audience. I don't know how much of it you saw, but a thought on Auburn that certainly looks like a legit SEC championship contender, a legit Final Four contender, and they beat Tennessee at home tonight.
So, yes, TJ, I unfortunately sat through that entire game, and the pain that game was a disgrace to college basketball. That's the type of game that non-college basketball fans point to and say, that's why I don't watch college basketball. That was a disgusting basketball game with each team making less than 20 shots from the field tonight. Auburn with 18.
Wow.
Tennessee with 17. And a total of 7 combined.
I did see, so okay, 7. I did see at one point they were a combined 4 for 35 from 3-point range. Think about that now. 4 for 35. You missed 31 of the 35 attempts from 2 of the best teams in the SEC. Some of that might be contested and guarded, but a lot of that is Brick City, right? This was ugly.
It was an off shooting night for both teams. Defense was good for sure, but it was an off shooting night for both sides. I think we can say that for certain. I loved what I saw from Broome with his 16 points that he had, 7 of 19 from the field. Really did a good job rebounding, 13 boards. And you think about this Auburn team, it was so interesting because going into tonight, the talk was, wow, Bruce Pearl's got this high-powered offensive team that's so explosive. They can shoot from anywhere. They can score and hang with anybody. And what do we say? It doesn't matter the sport. College basketball, the NFL, college football, the NBA, good teams find ways to win on their off nights.
Yes, sir.
And for Auburn, what was probably their worst shooting performance of the season, I don't know for certain, but I would just have to take a guess. It probably was for them to find a way to win at home, a close game that was down to the wire. I was impressed with this Auburn team. They're sitting at 18-1. They're in the toughest conference in the country. They had a really good non-conference. I think this is the team to beat right now. I think Bruce Pearl's got something cooking up for them to win in these circumstances when they did not play well offensively. That's a really good sign for this team going forward from here.
And in all the craziness, including the 2020 crazy year where everything shut down, let us not forget Bruce Pearl was in a Final Four with Auburn back in 2019, and this team looks the part as well. One more stat on this Saturday night here as we do this on College Basketball Coast to Coast live on this Saturday. Social media platform CBB Coast to Coast live, as well as the YouTube page, College Basketball Coast to Coast. And we could also let you know that we're live on Facebook as well as Twitter X. The last time that 2 top 10 teams played, and in this case, it's 2 top 5 teams. The last time 2 top 5 teams played and neither one of them got to 55 points was Virginia over Louisville 10 years ago in 2015, February of 2015. That game finished 52-47. Auburn's ugly win tonight is 53-51 over Tennessee. It's been a decade. It's been 198 games in between where teams at least got to 55 points. So that didn't happen tonight on the program. All right, Tyler, anything else that struck you? Duke had to rally and win. Again, Xavier beat the 2-time champs tonight. UConn is not looking like championship material right now in the Big East. They may not even win the Big East. What else? Whether it's the SEC, Michigan State won again for a 12th straight Big Ten win. Anything else strike you real quick, Tyler Jones, on this Saturday?
Couple thoughts on the night. How about Vandy? You know, people are going to talk about that being a big upset, taking down a top 10 team in Kentucky. But Vanderbilt's a very good basketball team. And I think credit where credit's due. They had the same record as Kentucky going into tonight. I think they deserve some recognition for what they did. How about Texas coming back from down 20, the largest lead that Buzz Peterson has ever given up. Buzz Williams has given up in his entire coaching career there. Do it against a rival, Lone Star Showdown and all. I was very impressed with what Texas did.
22-point second half deficit, and Texas comes back and gets the last second 3. They led for less than 10 seconds in the game, right? At the most important 10 seconds, Tyler, for the win.
And then I also got to tell you, a team I really like right now, Iowa State, with a dominant win against Arizona State by 15 on the road. Cam Jones was fantastic. He had 33 points. I thought was unbelievable. And they got an interesting test coming up on Big Monday against Arizona as they're looking for the season sweep there. That Iowa State team, TJ's done a fantastic job. He's one of the best coaches in the country. I think he's even better than what Fred Hoiberg was there at Iowa State. And Fred Hoiberg did a phenomenal job. I think that Iowa State team, to me, they look like the second best team in the country. I think Auburn's number one, and I think Iowa State's the second best team. I think that Iowa State team is really dangerous, and I'm excited to see what they can do against Arizona. Arizona's played some better basketball as of late. Went through a lull there in the non-con, started hot in Big 12 play, winning 5 straight to open up things. Watch out for the Cyclones, and they handled Kansas pretty well just about a week ago as well.
Yes, they did. The kid Curtis Jones that had the 30 today, he is a transfer, I heard this, from Buffalo University. Not the Bills, who are playing the Chiefs, but the Buffalo Bulls, as I always say. He was averaging 2 points a game last year, and he has come to the Big 12 and is lighting it up for Iowa State. So give them credit as well. All right, my friend, Promote. You see his Twitter handle if you're watching us live at Tyler Jones Live. The Jones Reports, the podcast. And tomorrow for the Chiefs game, Promote what you're doing with Chat Sports and where and how they see you and find you.
We will be live tomorrow afternoon, beginning about 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 Eastern, for the Chiefs and Bills AFC Championship game, doing about a 90-minute pregame. We'll do a watch party, reacting to the game in real time. So if you're an NFL fan, I don't care if you're rooting for the Chiefs, the Bills, we'll take all of you. Come join us for that. Of course, the Jones Report podcast is available on all podcast platforms. We're talking plenty college basketball, college football, NFL, NBA, and more, and all that. And I'm on social media, X, Instagram, Facebook, at Tyler Jones Live. You can find me there. And certainly, TJ, the first of many conversations that we'll be having as we'll be in San Antonio here, just down the road from me, in just a matter of weeks, it seems.
Yep. It's been a wild January, not even February yet, much less March. Crazy games, including the Houston win over Kansas. You did post after all of that. My friend, get some rest and then do well with Chat Sports. We'll talk plenty of college hoops down the road. Thank you for being with us here on College Basketball Coast to Coast in our nightcap here on this Saturday night.
Thanks, CJ.
There is Tyler Jones with me. Again, thank you for finding us. Jason Powers coming up from the Powers on Sports podcast in a couple of moments as we do this live tonight. Again, 2 or 3 of the nighttime finals of note. We've been mentioning the Houston win is 92-86 in double overtime over Kansas. Also, tonight, the Tennessee-Auburn game. The Auburn win is 53-51 for Auburn. Xavier held on to beat UConn 76-72. UConn had the ball not once, but twice with a chance to maybe tie or win the game with a 3. Could not. And the Xavier Musketeers at home in the Big East get the win. And you wonder right now if UConn, they still don't have the outstanding, fantastic freshman Liam McNeely. He's not been playing the last couple of weeks with a high ankle sprain. If they get him back, it might help. Alex Caravan is one of the last links to the double national title teams. He fouled out of the game tonight. Wasn't enough. While we talk about this Xavier game with UConn, we'll talk more about that. So these are the nighttime games going on. Almost everything else is basically done tonight. Alabama won, but they only scored 80 points against LSU tonight in SEC play. Just a bevy of games coming up tonight. By the way, we are sponsored in part by Go Sleeves. Our friends at Go Sleeves, the therapeutic kinesiology sleeves for your elbow, your knees, your calves, etc. We want you to check out everything with Go Sleeves. As a sponsor here on College Basketball Coast to Coast, we're presented by them. Take a look at these kinesiology sleeves. As I like to say, the kinesiology technology does several things. Number one, it supports the tendons, the muscles. It increases blood flow. It helps with inflammation, supports your ability to recover, as you see on the screen if you're not able to see us, just take my word for it. The sleeves for the knees, the calves. We're seeing video, if you can't see it, of those that are working out, whether you're a weekend warrior, biking, running, basketball, tennis, pickleball. Go sleeves for any occasion, for the knees, for the calves. It's go time with Go Sleeves. And we remind you as well here on the program that we have a promo code for our friends at Go Sleeves as well. That is GoSleeves.com. GoSleeves.com/TJ to get a discount with our friends at Go Sleeves. Coming in subsequent shows, we'll talk to the founders, the co-founders, the owners of Go Sleeves. They're huge college basketball fans as well. It is go time with Go Sleeves. Proud sponsor here of college basketball coast to coast. Go to GoSleeves.com to see and find out more about these therapeutic kinesiology sleeves for your elbow, your knees, your calves. They've got more technology coming out for your back, your hamstrings, etc. Go time with Go Sleeves on that. With that, we'll add Jason Powers of the Powers on Sports podcast here to college basketball coast to coast. Full disclosure, you and I were together about 12 hours ago watching my twin daughters play a little JV basketball. We should let the audience in on this, like right away. Why bury the lead? Maybe the game of the day was us being there with the twins.
That's right.
JV basketball. My twins, Riley and Abby, make the show. Mr. Powers in the photo, coming to watch him play here in Tampa Bay and Hillsborough County. Thank you for doing that, by the way. As a proud dad, I was thrilled to see you get to be there and watch all of that.
A sweep. We had a sweep.
Yes, the Steinbrenner High School JV team wins both games. But who knew that was just going to warm up our day and our appetite of college basketball? A wild day today. Where do you want to begin with what we have seen this afternoon and tonight, Jason?
Tonight would not be a coaching clinic Bill Self would want televised on the summer circuit. I mean, what a complete meltdown by Kansas and Lawrence in Fog Allen, not in Houston, in Fog Allen.
And missed free throws, part of it. Maybe basically overcoaching with the timeouts called at the end. What else would you say? I mean, and again, let me add what I said with Tyler. You got to credit Houston. They made plays, they made shots, they took advantage of it. But what would you say about Self's coaching issues?
I mean, it's not all on Bill Self. It's the players, obviously. I mean, the point guard, I think they were up 2 in either regulation or the end of the first overtime. And the kid on the inbounds pass, not even looking, just chops down on the arm, sends Houston to the line to tie the game. I mean, not even looking at the defender. I mean, the Coit kid, I think his name is Coit, C-O-I-T, one of the guards, just blindly chops on an inbounds play, stupid. Then you're drawing up a play to try to lob the ball to Hunter Dickinson. That's your inbounds play when you're up 3. And then you're all
can't get the ball inbounds out of a timeout like 3 or 4 times in the game. I mean, sloppy.
Bagunda plays a great game, but then his 5th foul was just a dumb on a missed free throw, a no-brainer. Right. What are you doing trying to fight for that loose ball that you have no chance of getting? Commits his 5th foul. I mean, just some self-inflicted wounds. I mean, you're all Big 12 point guard, DeJuan Harris. If you make one of the 2 free throws, the game's over. They win the game +7. They're up 7 with 16 seconds to go. So he bricks them, not even close. Terrible misses. Just a horrible off. They had beaten 9 straight top 10 teams in a row in Lawrence. And, I told you earlier in the night, this was a general principle game. It was a pick'em game on the lines. I know,
right.
If you're betting the game, it was a pick'em game. If you got Kansas at home against anybody in the country as a pick'em, general principle says you take Kansas. I mean,
that was only their 4th loss in the last 3.5 years at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. To your point about how rarely they lose there. But again, how much, same way I prompted Tyler, how much do you credit Houston for making the threes, especially at the end of overtime?
Yep, you do.
Where they make the 2 huge threes, and they made every big shot in the second overtime as well in this game.
No doubt. Give him credit. Sharp, who's a Tampa kid, Emmanuel Sharp, went to high school down here. He made the big 3. And then how about the other kid, Malik? Was it Malik Wilson?
It's Roberts, and it's Roberts too, the big man underneath, both.
But Wilson comes off the bench and scores almost 20, which they get almost nothing out of Sharp, and they get almost nothing out of LJ Cryer. So the Wilson kid comes off the bench. I believe he had 17 or 18. He hit the last three to tie the game.
You're correct.
He hit the three to tie the game to send it to the double overtime. And boy, that Roberts guy, you talk about a guy that's improved the last 3 years. That guy has made drastic jumps in his skill level and his ability to score the last couple of years for Kelvin Sampson.
Jawan Roberts had 24, had 9 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal in the game, and a couple of big shots, one in the overtime, one in the double overtime, and Houston gets the win.
Kind of reminds me of an Ed Pinckney back in the day for Villanova.
It's kind of an old school.
Yeah, I mean, just a guy and he's a lefty too. Pinckney was a lefty. Roberts is a lefty. Just that one of those kind of, he's not overly skilled, but boy, he has drastically improved with his post moves, things like that. He is a physical player. He gets all the gritty, tough rebounds, and give him credit. We saw him, 2 weeks ago at UCF. They ran the inbounds play to Roberts at the end.
Last Saturday.
The game-winning inbounds play to Roberts, who isolated and made the game-winning layup in Orlando to get out of that game alive. So, but give Kelvin Sampson credit. That team plays hard all the time. You see him berating those guys on the sidelines from start to finish. I mean, that is just a tough group there. But let's don't bury the lead. Kansas melted down. Kansas had no business losing that game.
No doubt. Say something about Duke. We watched Duke late this afternoon, early this evening.
Yep.
Start the second half. They were in command at Wake Forest, a place where they were upset a year ago.
Yep.
This is a new year. It's a new team with Cooper Flagg there. They begin the second half 2 for 20 from the floor. They made 2 more shots than you and me. Yep. I'm not so sure that Riley and Abby Rives weren't needed to help Duke there at Winston-Salem to start. Yet, they weathered the storm on the road. They won again. That's 13 straight wins, as we see on the screen on College Basketball Coast to Coast. That's the longest win streak in the country right now. Thoughts on Duke, Jason?
Yeah, no, they're a good squad. Flagg is not the only guy they have. They got other pieces there. I'm impressed with Wake Forest. Nice turnaround there at Wake Forest the last couple of years. That guy's done a really good job revitalizing
Steve Forbes, yep.
He's done a nice job revitalizing that program, making them relevant again in the ACC. And you make a good point. Usually we see Duke scoring 75, 80 points. They grinded one out tonight, scored 63. I think it was 63-56 was the final. So give Duke credit. They're able to play a little defense. Cooper Flagg made some he didn't play great, but he made some critical shots when they needed them. And you made the good point of they weathered the storm. They shot terribly to start the second half. Wake Forest took the lead. That building was on fire. But give Duke credit. They weathered it, and they won those kind of tough, gritty games that they've not necessarily been known to win the last couple of years.
Again, that's Jason Powers with me. Find him at JPO Sports if you're only hearing us on the podcast after the fact. If you're seeing us live, we're on the social media outlets with College Basketball Coast to Coast. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter, X. We're also on Facebook as well. A little more on Cooper Flagg. Yes, he had 7 turnovers, but he had a couple of key baskets, kept his composure. We have to keep reminding ourselves, Adam Zagoria was talking about this last week, who's been covering Cooper Flagg the last couple of years in high school at the highest level before he got to Duke. The kid just turned 18 last month in December, but these are the kind of games and the tests on the road that are going to make you better for March, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's not going to score 25 every night. There's going to be shooting slumps for a week or so here from time to time. But again, making the winning plays. Again, he turned the ball over a lot, but what Adam told us last week, he's not afraid to make the extra pass. He's not afraid to be a ball distributor when need, because he knows, and we all know, the double team's coming late in the game if the game's close. We know where the ball's going, and we know that the double team's probably coming from the defense. So he's not afraid to pass out of the double team when need be. Again, we'll just see him keep growing into the maturity level of getting deeper into an ACC conference tournament. And again, we'll see what he can bring to the NCAA tournament. But yeah, Duke's got plenty of weapons outside of Cooper Flagg. I mean, Cooper Flagg's not the only thing they got.
The Kneppel kid who's a freshman, he's about a 6'5" guard. He's coming into his own. Proctor's a
good.
veteran point guard. They got a couple of bigs that are athletic. I don't know how strong the ACC is, but certainly Duke looks like Elite Eight Final Four material right now. You don't know for sure, and they've had some shortcomings. NC State got them in the Elite Eight game last year. That's last year.
How nervous are we with North Carolina?
Okay, so you said that last week, and since you said that, they lost to Wake Forest. And today, you talk about another Houdini job. They're down 4 in the final 20 seconds
to Boston College at home.
Who's not good at home. They're on the verge of a third straight ACC loss in 7 days. They find a way to get the game tied. They make the key plays in the overtime to win. And oh, by the way, it's now looming that they're about to play Duke coming up in the first of the 2 regular season meetings. But I think we are – you got to be at like DEFCON 2, going down to almost DEFCON 1 here, that North Carolina does not look like a team that's going to go very far in March, right?
I mean, it doesn't look like it. When you're laboring to beat Boston College at home, and I know teams can play good, but they have labored all year. I think we mentioned it last week. I don't think they have a guy who says, go get me a bucket. I know they got some older guys and all that, but just good players. I mean, how does North Carolina not have 1 or 2 McDonald's All-Americans on that team? I don't get that, or elite transfers or whatever means that they're recruiting guys. I don't get how they just are falling way behind in the recruiting battles here.
Again, a few more moments here with Jason to get some thoughts in. We're also going to welcome in Matt Zemek in a little bit here for some thoughts as well of Matt's insight.
What about Michigan State? Are we talking enough about 8-0 Michigan State?
Let's talk about 12 straight wins. They won against Rutgers at Madison Square Garden earlier today. Izzo just lunch pail, goes about their business. They guard, they rebound. They've got the fantastic freshman that had 20 in the game today. So, yeah, let's say some things.
Under the radar. I'm not
Cohen Carr had the 14 in the game today. And who else for Sparty that had the 20? That was Jace Richardson with the 20 in the game today. Again, 8-0 in the Big Ten. And the Big Ten is one of the tougher conferences in America. Yeah. Michigan State looks good. Give me some more on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see Izzo. Looks like he has a offensive team. Seems like they're a team that like each other. I know in the last several years, there's always been, some chatter that maybe they didn't love each other and playing together as a group. But boy, he's got it going. I've not heard anybody really. I mean, they're the most underrated 17-2, 8-0 conference leading team in America. Nobody's talking about them. I mean, it's a good conference. It's you got Purdue, you got Michigan playing well, but boy, Tom Izzo has got it going up in East Lansing.
They are currently 2 clear of the field in the 18-team Big Ten at 8-0. Purdue is 8-2. Michigan is 6-2 at the moment. And again, for Sparty in the 8-game win streak, it includes victory of the 8-game Big Ten win streak. It includes wins at Ohio State, at Northwestern, against Illinois, and now they win this game at Madison Square Garden against Rutgers. Coming up, they will play Minnesota. Minnesota upset Oregon earlier tonight. So that might be a dangerous game because Minnesota also beat Michigan. Minnesota may be coming around. They play a double overtime game with Ohio State. So Michigan State will put the 12-game win streak on the line with Minnesota coming Tuesday night. They then will go to Los Angeles, Jason Powers, and play USC, followed by playing UCLA. USC next weekend, UCLA early the following week. Here we go again with the East-West travel back and forth. But the Spartans with Jaden Atkins leading them in scoring. He's got 3 or 4 guys that can score right now, and you're right. Out of conference, they played in Maui. They lost to my Memphis Tigers, to these guys in Maui in the second game of that tournament, but they did beat Colorado and North Carolina out there in that tournament, and I was looking for what else they had out of the conference. Nothing else really significant. They lost to Kansas in the Champions Classic in Atlanta earlier this year, but Michigan State looks like the real deal. It's still looming, the games with Oregon. They will play Oregon at home. How good is that game, and how tough is that ticket going to be at the Breslin Center for Michigan State, Oregon in February? They still have Indiana. They still have Illinois. They still have Purdue. They still have the 2 games with Michigan.
Yep.
Not going to be easy, but just say some more here about the Spartans. Perennially, they're always there. Come March, come the Final Four. No reason to think any different this go-around.
But the last several years, though, they've always been in the 8, 9, 10 seed bracket. They're going to be a 1 or 2 seed right now. Right now, they're at worst a 2 seed. They're going to be vying for one of those 1 seed lines. Izzo's not had a team like this that's been this good, this consistent into January for a while. I mean, they've always been. I mean, the last several years, they've had to make a little run late to guarantee their spot. They've always been an 8, 9, 10 seed kind of team. This year, they're going to be a 1, 2, or 3 seed at worst, in my view. And
so far, I mean, they're living up to it, winning that tough Big Ten. Anything else strike you about them or about today?
Big Purdue win last night over Michigan. They
Correct.
thumped Michigan by 25-28, something like that. That was
a bounce back win after they had lost themselves at home to Ohio State. Big Ten, very competitive right now. Anybody can beat anybody, because Michigan went out and beat UCLA at UCLA. But then Purdue, who went and beat Oregon at Oregon, comes back home and loses to Ohio State. Now they beat Michigan last night. So Big Ten looking tough.
I mean, Indiana continues to struggle with Mike Woodson.
Indiana, Maryland tomorrow.
Right.
The heat is still on Mike Woodson. Maryland off of clobbering Illinois midweek.
Right.
Let me double check. That game tomorrow is at Bloomington, I believe. Maryland at Bloomington. How about the schedule maker putting Maryland in Champaign, and then if I am correct, they're also in Bloomington for this matchup with Indiana a few days later, back to back. They are noon Eastern time at Assembly Hall.
Tough. Yeah, Indiana loses at Northwestern in midweek. Bad loss there. I mean, just Woodson is under the gun. I can promise you up there. They are not going to put up with that much longer, I don't think. I mean, they're 5-4 in the conference, but boy, they are losing some. When they lose ugly. It's not good.
And he has not achieved the way that the Indiana expectations are. When you're at Indiana, when you're at Kentucky, Kansas, Syracuse, North Carolina, I'm just going down the list, Duke, Michigan State, UCLA, it's a different standard. It's not good enough to finish 5th in the conference. It's not good enough to, not even make the championship game of the conference tournament and then get beat in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Not good enough. So they just haven't taken the steps. Hey, we are in the Sunshine State. Should we not be talking more about the Florida Gators, who destroyed Georgia today by 30 earlier this afternoon in Gainesville? Walter Clayton, who's a fantastic guard. The rest of the country doesn't know enough about him. He looks like he's got an NBA body, about 6'5", can fill it up from the outside. He and Elijah Martin, the Florida Atlantic transfer off the Final Four team, both had 17. They've beaten Georgia 12 times in a row as a program. They look like one of the best teams in college basketball to this point. Is it going to hold up for the Gators?
Can the coaching staff stay out of trouble?
Right.
I mean,
that's part.
That's part of it. But no, they got Final Four talent. I mean, they got bigs, they got guards, they got shot makers. Clayton is a big time. Remember, he was at Iona with
Patino.
Iona with Patino. That's how he ended up at Florida. After Patino left. But they've got players. They've got the coaching staff. They know what they're doing. Just we've talked about you worry if there's something else coming with that coaching staff down the road. But boy, impressive win. And Georgia's good. Georgia's a good team. Mike White, the former Florida coach, who they've put it to the last couple of years here. But Georgia's got to go.
It's interesting. The 12 straight wins includes Mike White beating Tom Crean previously while being the Florida coach. Now he's been on the wrong end of it the last couple of years with Todd Golden being the Gator coach against Georgia. But I'm just looking. I mean, Florida again has the loss at Kentucky, but I mean, my goodness, a 30-point win. Today, they had to struggle to beat South Carolina. They got up to South Carolina in the ice and the snow and came from behind to beat them. But they also have the 30-point win over Tennessee in this mix. They blasted Texas as well. All right, the Florida schedule includes Vanderbilt, coming up. They got Tennessee, first of all. They got the week off, and they play Tennessee at Tennessee. Then they'll play Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt knocked off Kentucky today. Then they play Auburn. How about those 3 games? Right. Tennessee, Vandy, Auburn next for Florida. How many of those 3 are they going to win? Are they going to win all 3 of them? Or 2 of the 3?
They're not winning all 3.
Maybe one of the 3? Maybe one of the 3. At Tennessee, Vandy at home, at Auburn for the Gators.
I think at Tennessee is a tough task for Florida. I think Tennessee, with the way they can play defense, and again, we worry about their scoring ability, but they can defend. They're not going to get there. You will get a big effort in Knoxville next weekend against Florida with the rematch coming up. Auburn. We know where's that Auburn game at? Is that in Gainesville?
At Auburn. At Tennessee, Vandy at home, and then in about 2 weeks at Auburn.
Again, tough road to hoe. If you can say we'll take 2 out of 3, Todd Golden would take that tomorrow and be done with it and move on. Again, this conference, as you know, every night's a tough night. Even South Carolina has taken Florida to the wire, lost to Mississippi State in overtime. They're not great, but they're playing tough. Winning road games in that league is very, very impressive to do. And if you can win road games, especially against the upper echelon, major kudos to you. By the way, should Vandy be storming the court beating Kentucky?
Second court storm in like a week. After they beat Kentucky. Well, they're a good team. Vandy's pretty decent. How about Kentucky was down 14 at the half, came back and had the lead, and Vandy scores the last 6 points of the game. Mark Byington, the coach. Yeah. Give credit where it's due to Vandy for that. Love it. Shall we welcome in while we continue the chat? I know you love our colleague, Matt Zemek. Let's bring him in and make it a trifecta here of conversation on college basketball coast to coast. Hello, Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire, the USA Today USC Trojans website, as well as longtime national college basketball writer. Love his insight. I affectionately refer to him as like our West Coast and Western Bureau Chief here on the program. How are you feeling on a Saturday night here on college basketball coast to coast and the live nightcap show, the live recap show? How are things, Matt?
Well, a week ago, I came on here and said, Oregon's resume looks great. Ducks have a lot of high-end wins, so they are going to get a pretty solid seed. But I told you, here on college basketball coast to coast, the Ducks start just about every game slowly, and that's not sustainable, and Dana Altman needs to figure it out. What happens today? Minnesota jumps them 15-5 at the start of the game. It's like 37-26 about 15 minutes in. Like Oregon just can't keep digging itself into these ditches. And it caught up with Oregon today in the barn in Williams Arena. So that Oregon needs to be ready to play the first 10 minutes. It's kind of like the college basketball season. November and December count. They matter just as much as March on the team sheet. Sure. On Selection Sunday. In a basketball game, hey, you need to be ready for those first 10 to 15 minutes. They count just as much as the last 25. If you're always down 10, 12, 15, that's not a way to consistently carry yourself throughout a season. The Ducks are going to get roasted in March if they don't solve this problem.
Who is the coach at Minnesota these days?
I gotta look. I know Dawson Garcia is the star player, and he had 31 today. He's been coming on. He's the guy that hit the half-court shot to beat Michigan in overtime. He's an outstanding scorer. He's a transfer, and he had 31 today, and Oregon did not have an answer for him. And here we go again. We keep talking about this, Matt, with the Western teams having to come east, Eastern teams having to go west. You're having to go back and forth, and Oregon found out that Minnesota, one of the bottom teams in the Big Ten, not an easy place to play. Just one more time on the point. Go ahead.
Just, Oregon's been starting games slowly, home, away, neutral. Like, it hasn't really mattered where Oregon's playing. Actually, this was Oregon's first true road game loss of the season. The other losses had come in Eugene or in Big Ten play, Illinois, Purdue, and UCLA. They were all at home. Deep in the woods. So that's kind of an interesting quirk.
Elsewhere, Ben Johnson, not to be confused with the disgraced coach. Ben Johnson is, the Bears' new coach, correct. The Bears' new coach, the former Lion offensive coordinator. This is Ben Johnson, the former Northwestern player who's been a Minnesota assistant previously. He is the Minnesota coach, and they're obviously improved.
Yeah.
And the Big Ten is just loaded, Matt Zemek, including UCLA kind of coming around, USC, who you cover, playing better. And then you start talking about Purdue being in this mix and Illinois being in this mix.
Maryland.
With Michigan State and Maryland. I mean, this is a loaded Big Ten, Matt and Jason.
It's been impressive.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Matt. No, go ahead, Matt.
No, it's been impressive how Michigan State just keeps answering every challenge. I know you guys talked about the Spartans earlier on the show. And in terms of, out here on the West Coast, since I'm the West Coast bureau chief, let's talk about UCLA for a minute. Why have the Bruins gotten better? Why have they responded well to a 4-game losing streak and ripped off 3 straight wins? Mick Cronin finally started playing Ade Mara. UCLA fans are saying, you have this really big guy, 7'3". He can give you some defense, he can give you some rebounding, and because he's just so damn tall, he can play over the top of a smaller defender and probably get you 10 points a game. So He plays extended minutes against Wisconsin, scores 22, and then against Washington, 12, 7, and 5, 12.7 rebounds, 5 block shots. So Cronin listened to the fan base. Like, he finally adjusted his substitution pattern. He finally gave his raw big man with a lot of untapped potential a chance to play some extended minutes. That's made the difference. Like, that was the piece of the puzzle UCLA didn't have, and it didn't have because Cronin wasn't putting Ade Mara on the floor. So that has been the difference for UCLA these past few games. And now UCLA goes to the Galen Center, USC's building, for a huge Monday night game. If USC is going to make a run at the NCAA tournament, USC has to beat UCLA on Monday, and then Michigan State at home in LA next Saturday. Got to win both. 2 of 2. 1 of 2 won't do it. USC has to win both games this week. Then we can talk about a run on the bubble toward March Madness.
And we didn't even mention Wisconsin beat USC. Wisconsin hung in there with UCLA in a high-scoring game and lost. They're good. They can score. Ohio State gets the win midweek with Purdue. How loaded? I mean, Matt, are we talking about a Big Ten that could easily have 8, 9 teams, maybe even get a 10th team? How many bids between the SEC and the Big Ten to the NCAA tournament? But what about the Big Ten? 8 teams at least, right? Right now, you would think, in the tournament.
8 looks pretty solid because they are spreading the wins around. You want those wins to be evenly distributed. It looks like that's happening. I will say Nebraska needs to start getting a few wins because Nebraska's lost 5 in a row. That looked like a pretty solid tournament team a couple weeks ago, and now right on the bubble. I know you guys talked a little bit earlier about Maryland, Indiana. That's I like to use this phrase, double rubble, bubble trouble. It's a bubble game from both sides of it. So both teams badly need that one in Assembly Hall. So if they can continue to distribute the wins evenly, that's how you maximize bids. SEC's looking like at least 12 with, Missouri and Vanderbilt are pretty solid now. And so SEC is looking like 12. And the Big Ten, 8 looks about right at this point.
Here's the list from the NCAA net ranking. It's not everything, but their net power ranking. If you're in the top 30, you're definitely in, you would think. Here are the Big Ten teams that are in the top 30. Purdue is 9. Illinois is 10. Michigan State is 16. Maryland is 19. Michigan is 20. Wisconsin is 22. Maryland is 23. And then if you want to go to the outskirts, UCLA is 36 at the moment. So I just listed 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams right there out of the Big Ten. Loaded conference, boys. Jason, did you have a follow-up on that, on how loaded the Big Ten is?
No, and it gets good. And again, you got Dusty May doing what he's doing at Michigan, got that program back on track. I mean, he's been a great hire there. The mid-level of that Big Ten is so congested. As Matt says, you could have any one of those 4 or 5 teams that are 3-5 in the conference now could go on a 3-4 game winning streak and completely flip their season around by having a good 8-10 days where you win 2 or 3 conference games in a row. So that middle pack of that Big Ten is going to be the part that's that's I think going to be the key. Where if they're going to get 8 teams, are they going to get 8? It's that middle class of the Big Ten.
While we're here, Matt Zemek, weigh in. You always love the phrase rock fight. I don't even know if this was a rock fight. This more or less was like a caveman fight. Tell me more about Auburn and Tennessee. I have the stat again for those just joining us live that this is the first time that 2 top 5 teams played and neither one of them got to 55 points. It's a 53-51 Auburn win in 10 years. A Tony Bennett ugly game for Virginia against Louisville was a 52-47 game in February of 2015. There have been 198, I saw this stat, 198 games, top 5 against top 5 since then, where at least one of the teams, Matt and Jason, got to 55 points. Neither Auburn or Tennessee got to 55. Wow. Full disclosure, I was watching the finish of UConn and Xavier, and I finally got done with that with Xavier holding off UConn. I joined the Tennessee-Auburn game, and it's literally 33-all with 8 minutes left. Nobody could score in this game. Matt, give me a thought or two.
The big story from this game is Janai Broome, to me. Now, others might disagree, but to me, he cemented National Player of the Year. Obviously, we have a month and a half left in the regular season, but like to me, he's clearly a notch ahead of Cooper Flagg, partly because he was injured. He comes back. No one knows what he's going to look like, and he was the best Auburn player on the floor very clearly. Auburn does not win that game without Janai Broome. Did it on offense, did it on defense. At the very end, the smart play to throw the ball ahead to run out the clock. So he did a little bit of everything, and he wasn't 100%. Still had a lot of wrapping around the ankle, the leg, and so Cooper Flagg, he's going to be the number 1 pick. Like, I'm not hating on him, but what Janai Broome is doing in the SEC, Cooper Flagg can't control the ACC being mediocre. He can't control that, but it's there. It's reality. Duke's great, but Duke's playing in the watered down ACC. Janai Broome is just slaying one top 10 dragon after another. So to me, he is clearly the National Player of the Year at this point.
16 points, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks, made a couple of huge plays at the end of the game defensively. What about the internet's going crazy with this on the final play of the game? One quick shot out of the timeout, down 2 by Tennessee in the corner with like 7 seconds left. They had a guy flying right at the rim, a big flying right at the rim for the putback to tie it. Couldn't make it. But Janai Broome, it is a Disney property, was auditioning, I keep saying, for Dancing with the Stars because he took 3 or 4. He did the Paso Doble, I think, there at midcourt, and they did not call a travel as he was trying to lob the ball in the front court to kill the clock. Rick Barnes went crazy. It would have been Tennessee's ball with about 3 seconds left. If you see the replay again, take a look. I mean, there's 2 or 3 pivot feet from Janai Broome, but Auburn will take it. They will hang on. They will take it.
Are you saying he's getting some Patrick Mahomes treatment as the projected player of the year?
Maybe.
Are you saying?
But he was back. He played basically an entire game there with the injured knee, Broome, and he's a fantastic player.
Tampa kid, by the way. Tampa kid.
Yes, another high school player coming out of this area. Rare, but he was here for a little bit. That's 7 top 25 wins for Auburn, by the way. Now with the win because of the SEC being so loaded.
Here's what I like about Auburn, guys.
Yeah.
They don't have to score 80 to win. They can win multiple different ways. That's what I love about Bruce Pearl, that it makes me nervous about Alabama because Alabama's up and down. I don't think Alabama can win games in the low 50s.
Great point.
High 50s, low. Bruce Pearl has shown in his career he can win multiple different ways.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we were just asking the questions about Mick Cronin's team. Well, they've shown that they can score, which has always been the knock, and it was the knock earlier this year on UCLA, for example. Do you have other ways that you can win? Good to know on Auburn. By the way, the Vandy win over Kentucky. Back to that. Matt, a thought or two on, again, Mark Pope's first season. They've suffered a couple of losses now, had the Alabama home loss last weekend. and then now have lost to Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. Vandy beating Tennessee and beating Kentucky in a 7-day period and another court storm. Matt, a thought on that while we talk SEC while we're here for a moment or two?
Yeah. Last week on this show on college basketball coast to coast, I mentioned that the top 2 candidates for National Coach of the Year are Darian DeVries of West Virginia and Pat Kelsey of Louisville. Yep. Now, Mark Byington of Vanderbilt has to enter that conversation. Vanderbilt picked last in the SEC preseason poll. And one reminder about Coach of the Year, in terms of great coaching jobs just within the context of one season, I'm always going to give the nod. I'm always going to give a higher grade to a coach who turns around a difficult situation in 1 year.
Yeah.
And all 3 of those guys qualify. They're doing it in 1 year, not 2. And that's why what Kurt Cignetti did in football with Indiana was so special. Did it in 1 year. He didn't need 2. He didn't need 3. He did it in 1 year. And so Mark Byington, what he's doing at Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt now, not a lock, but very solidly inside the cut line, beating Tennessee and Kentucky. Like, that's going to move Vanderbilt several notches above the bubble. So, Vanderbilt was floundering for several years with Jerry Stackhouse. And then they make the right hire. This is, again, Jason said this last week. This is the power of coaching. This is the difference the right hire makes. So buy in with Byington. That is the adorable Vanderbilt slogan.
There you go. The Doors. They are 38 in the net. That was their 3rd quad 1 win. Here again, the SEC, my God, in the net has Auburn at 1, has Tennessee at 4, has Florida at 6. It has Alabama at 7. 4 of the 7 best teams, according to the NCAA's net power ranking, are in the SEC. And then you have Mississippi State at 21, Texas A&M at 13, Ole Miss at 17, Kentucky at 12, Vanderbilt at 38. This conference legitimately going to get 10 and may get more.
And how about
in the tournament?
How about a guy like Rodney Terry answering the bell as bad as they were getting crushed? They beat Missouri midweek. Then they come back from 22 down at home. He was under a lot of heat. They got off to a terrible start. That's a game they really needed for Rodney Terry. Again, they got to keep winning games here, but that's a building kind of win there for Texas.
Texas beating their rival Texas A&M. What did I see? A&M has now lost 8 straight times in Austin. They've only recently now been in the same. Interesting on that. All right, one more thing to cover while I have both of you here as we're in the waning moments of talking about all this different stuff on college basketball.
Real quick, we got to ask Matt. What about the meltdown in Lawrence, Matt Zemek?
Yeah,
How
Kansas and
that?
Houston. Give us a Zemek take on the Houston win. How much do you credit Houston? How much do you blame Kansas for not just regulation, but in overtime, not putting the game away, sir?
Down.
Yeah. What do you think, Matt?
Well, we watched that Boston College, North Carolina game, and Boston College couldn't get the inbounds pass in. 5-second violation, so had a 4-point lead in the final 20 seconds, went to overtime, lost. So Kansas did the same thing that Boston College did. So when you're doing the same thing that an Earl Grant coached Boston College team is doing, that's not very good. So, Kansas obviously should have put that one away, didn't do it. While I'm still on here, just a few other notes.
Twice they should have put that game away.
Yes, absolutely. Before I go, got to get a few more West Coast notes in.
Give me another one
from the notebook. Yeah, so two notes. In the WCC, St. Mary's had been feasting on the lower end of the West Coast Conference, and everyone was wondering, okay, what happens when St. Mary's has to play the top half? So St. Mary's blasts San Francisco on Thursday by 20, and then goes up to Pullman and handles Washington State on the road. So, questions answered by Randy Bennett's team. St. Mary's unbeaten in the WCC, 2-game lead over Gonzaga at the end of January. So St. Mary's is the real meal deal so far in the WCC. And then in the Mountain West, the big story this week was, we talked last week, UNLV had those 2 great wins, beat Utah State, beat San Diego State on the road, put itself right in the NCAA tournament conversation. But there's a reason why UNLV hasn't made the NCAA tournament in quite some time. And that's because as soon as things look up, can't sustain it. UNLV loses at home to Wyoming and then can't get the recovery win against New Mexico in a very close home game. So a disastrous week for UNLV, and also staying in the state of Nevada. Nevada just got drummed by San Diego State tonight.
Yes, they did.
So neither Nevada nor UNLV in the NCAA tournament. Really bad week for basketball in the state of Nevada in the Mountain West.
New Mexico looked good. That was an early game in the West, a noon start out in Vegas. They looked good early. Donovan Dent, the guard, Nelly Jr. Joseph, the big down low, had a couple of big plays late in that game to win. By the way, I'm also looking from the West Coast Conference results tonight that Santa Clara, who beat Washington State midweek or back on Thursday night, Santa Clara went to Oregon State and Oregon State beat them. That West Coast Conference tournament has been the Gonzaga Invitational forever. It looks like now you could make the case that 4 or 5 teams could win it, including Gonzaga, including St. Mary's, including Oregon State, including Washington State. Stay tuned for the WCC tournament in Las Vegas. All right, I wanted your thoughts, guys, on Xavier beating UConn tonight, the 2-time defending champs. They did it in Cincinnati. Thrilling. What a great atmosphere. Thrilling final 2 or 3 minutes. UConn had the ball twice, down by 2. Got a shot clock violation late in the game as well out of a timeout. Xavier out-executed UConn. Any thoughts? Jason Powers, a thought? UConn does not look like even the best team in the Big East right now, much less a Final Four contender. Can they get it together?
One, I would say, is Aiden McElhaney regretting leaving St. Mary's. Limited minutes at UConn. I know he's probably getting a little payday, but boy, that guy was the general at St. Mary's, and has not worked out well at UConn so far. But for UConn, good for Danny Hurley to get beat a little bit. He needs a little humble pie. As much as he likes to run his mouth and all the stuff he likes to say, a little humble pie is probably good for Danny Hurley right about now.
And they got it stuck to them tonight. Again, Fremantle back. The big man's had a hurt foot for Xavier. They win the game for Sean Miller's team. Thought Matt Zemek on that one tonight. Another fantastic game tonight. I mean, it didn't matter if it was Wake Forest and Duke. It didn't matter if it was Houston and Kansas, Texas A&M. Yep. This game tonight with Xavier and UConn, Auburn, Tennessee. It didn't matter, but Xavier gets the win. Matt Zemek.
Yep. If people wait until March to enjoy college basketball, you miss out on most of the show because today just so many close, riveting, intense, important basketball games, the big ones and the small ones and everything in between. In terms of Xavier UConn, just Liam McNeely, right? Like that limitation, not having him, like that has become a very, very big deal. I love Jason's point about Aiden Mahaney that Xavier was going at him consistently. Like opponents view him as the weak point. So he went to the East and he's become a tiny little fish in an ocean of sharks. So that UConn roster was just not constructed as well as the previous ones.
Well, and they obviously have had to reload with players going to the NBA, et cetera. I was just looking here for the Big East, and again in the net ranking, St. John's obviously is surging. They're having their best season in 30 years under Rick Pitino. You look at the moment at the teams in the net ranking. Again, if you're in the top 30, you're probably solid. That's Marquette at 15. St. John's is second in the conference at 8-1. Marquette is 8-1. St. John's is 26 in the NCAA's net ranking. UConn, even with the loss tonight, is still 35. Creighton is 40 in the net rankings. And that's about it for anybody that's in the top 40. So the Big East, 3, maybe 4 teams right now in the NCAA tournament. UConn's going to be in the tournament, but are they going to end up being like an 8-9 game? That's conceivable, right, Matt? Right, Jason? Yeah. What would both of you say to that? Could possibly be there, could be worse, right?
Yeah. What about Kyle Neptune? Is he in big trouble at Villanova, Matt Zemek?
What do you think?
I think he's cooled things off with, Villanova generally being better, but obviously the loss to Georgetown.
And just the point, they did beat UConn about 10 days ago. So go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, it was really bad in early January, and they've put together, generally a good month, not a great month, but like they better make the tournament. That's for sure. No question about that.
Right. I have something for you with the Xavier win over Connecticut tonight. Sean Miller, the Xavier coach. Do either one of you know where I'm going? Let's go there.
Send it in, Jerome. Send it in, Jerome.
Can we just say that it's been 37 years ago tonight? We've now crossed midnight hour. 37 years ago tonight, January 25th, 1988. How about this? Take a look at Sean Miller handling the ball.
Bill Raftery.
And there comes Jerome Lane with Send It In, Jerome. That's January 25th, 1988 in Pittsburgh's old gymnasium against Providence in the old Big East. He shattered the backboard. For the audience that's not seeing it on the podcast, you have to have seen this by now. It's out there on the YouTube highlights. Look at a little small, skinny Sean Miller as the guy that makes the pass. And the one thing I did not remember in reliving this highlight 4 decades later is that play happened 4 minutes into the game. This is at the 15-something mark of the first half that Jerome Lane smashed the backboard, Matt Zemek and Jason Powers. We're going to see it again on the replay on the video show. They're showing the shattered glass if you're with us on podcast, and we're watching the old ESPN Big East replay.
Big Monday. Is this Big Monday?
Big Monday with Jerome Lane, with Mike Gorman, the legendary Celtics voice, calling the Big Monday games, with Bill Raftery and the great off-the-cuff, Send It In, Jerome, on the dunk. We look at the replay one more time at Jerome Lane. That's 37 years ago, kids. 1988, January of 1988. I see Matt Zemek smirking. I see Jason Powers smiling.
By the way, watch the facial. Watch Jerome almost jump over this defender, by the way.
By the way, a total babyface Sean Miller on the pass. Incredible. Matt Zemek, that's what a moment. What a moment in the Big East, and it helped the lore of the Big East grow even more.
That was a good Pitt team. Remember they had Charles Smith as well.
Correct.
The big man. I mean, that was a really good. Paul Evans, I believe, was the coach. They were really good for a bunch of years there at Pitt.
Matt Zemek, it's an iconic moment of shattering the backboard. Daryl Dawkins had done it before. We're seeing the replay again on the live stream of the College Football Coast to Coast recap. And Jerome Lane, again, I would have lost money that play wasn't later in the game. It was 4 minutes into the game. It delayed the game for some 40 minutes. They had to get another basket from another arena after Jerome Lane sent it in. Matt Zemek.
2 things on this. One is that before there was onions, there was Send It In. So, just in terms of, the legend of Bill Raftery, Send It In preceded onions as the signature moment. And the second point is that, it took a long time for Raftery to get that chair at the Final Four on CBS Turner. And it was by accident that he got that job. Remember, Greg Anthony was the successor to Clark Kellogg, and it's only because he got into some, Eugene Robinson Super Bowl 33 style trouble. For those who get the indirect reference.
Look it up.
How about the direct reference of dialing 1-800-ESCORT and having the escort be an undercover cop? That's what you're talking about. And then Greg Anthony's no longer on the CBS broadcast.
Yeah. So it's only by accident that Raftery got that assignment. Like, he should have been the successor to Billy Packer. And hey, Clark Kellogg's a great guy and a good analyst, but we all know that Bill Raftery deserved to call the Final Four. So the fact that Raftery has finally become the voice of the Final Four as a TV analyst, that's part of why Send It In, Jerome is as big a moment, and we're celebrating it and talking about it right now, because Bill Raftery is a legend of college basketball broadcasting, and he's still sharp. Like, he's the college basketball Hubie Brown. Just keeps going, still lucid, still informative and entertaining, just the gold standard in this business. That's why we're talking about Send it in Jerome.
And he was
Love
the golden voice of the rise of the Big East back in the 80s when that conference was coming together with Dave Gavin. If you haven't seen that 30 for 30 on the Big East climb, watch that. It's a great watch.
Love that. Love
built.
that plug. And of course, Matt, I'll plug for the famous free throw line. What is it? Missed free throws will divide a family, I believe is Bill Raftery's line. Correct me on the full line.
That is. Free throws can destroy a family. He said it on the air, CBS, March 2002, at the end of the UCLA Cincinnati second round NCAA tournament game that UCLA won to go to San Jose in the Sweet 16.
How about that? So, I mean, Raft has been around forever. I've had the occasion to be around him a couple of different times. Just a treat. Great guy. He was on the call with Ian Eagle of the Michigan State 12th straight win today in the Big Ten at the Garden against Rutgers. And you're right, still sharp in his early 80s, calling these games, maybe even mid-80s now for Raft, and will be part of the Final Four on CBS with Ian Eagle and Grant Hill.
His night's just getting – TJ, it's Sunday morning. His night's just getting started.
I still remember while we're reliving all of this when he and Sean McDonough were doing the 6 overtime game in the Big East tournament between Syracuse and UConn. Who else? Raftery kept making references. Are they going to leave the watering holes open for us or not here in the middle of the night in New York? Raft, we love it. And Send It In Jerome is 37 years old as of tonight.
Wow.
Boys.
Okay, one more Raftery thought inspired by the Sean McDonough callback. Dick Enberg, Billy Packer, Al McGuire is the number one college basketball television announcing crew of all time. But for me, even better than Jim Nantz and Billy Packer, I'd say Sean McDonough and Bill Raftery. We talked about in the past about Bill Walton, and going off and Dave Pash trying to, put up with him.
Right. Right.
But see, McDonough Raftery, you had two guys throwing elbows at each other. Both playfully insulting each other. How Irish they were, how much they could drink, how late the nights were. And yet, both whip smart and both elite at their jobs. The McDonough Raftery pair is on the Mount Rushmore of all-time college basketball announce teams. So since Sean McDonough found his way into the conversation, had to bring that up about Raftery.
I still remember them doing an NCAA tournament game. I can't quote it like you on which one it was, but I do know it was on St. Patrick's Day that they were doing an NCAA tournament game, and it was a late-night game that was wandering towards midnight, and McDonough makes some kind of comment about, the lateness of the hour and how it's almost the end of St. Patrick's Day, and Raftery just deadpanned right away, like we needed an excuse to go out and have to call it a certain day of the year. He's right. For a couple of Irishmen, McDonough and Raftery on that. What a treat, and keep going, Bill Raftery with Send It In Jerome. All right, guys, I think we've pretty well covered just about everything else. Brother Powers, anything else?
Yeah, give a shout out to Vital. I know he had the fall at the house. He was supposed to be on the air today for the Duke game, I believe.
Correct.
It was supposed to be his comeback. He had an accident at the house. That's been delayed. We don't know yet if that when or if he's coming back.
The belief now is that he may be able to work next weekend. They're hoping to have him certainly in March. If that's the case, Dick, again, is 85 years old.
Right.
He has overcome cancer 2 different times, including cancer treatment on his vocal cords, on his voice. He had healed up enough to be able to talk, do the broadcast. They've been ramping him up to try to be able to do this. And then, as you mentioned, suffered a fall at the home, but has checked out physically apparently well enough.
Yep.
And it's not the same without Dickie V. Yep. We have to accept that sooner or later these voices aren't there anymore. Same thing, unfortunately, with Bob Uecker at 90.
Lee Corso.
You mentioned Lee Corso, but you mentioned Hubie Brown. Sooner or later, At 85, 90, you just can't expect it anymore. But here's hoping Dickie V can be back in February and March. Great point, Jason, on that, to have him back.
Hard to believe Dick Vitale's never called a NCAA tournament game, I don't think.
Well, he's not called a game for CBS. He has called the ESPN International of the Final Four. He was last. Right. He was last on the ESPN International outside the U.S. of the Final Four win by UConn in Houston, 2013. Right. 2023 on the call now almost 2 years ago. And that's the last hoops that he worked. Remember, he didn't work at all last season. Right. And now here we are into this season with him trying to get back.
The famous "I'm going to walk to Hartford" or whatever it was when Princeton almost beat Georgetown back with Pete Carril back in the late 80s.
Going to have to walk to Hartford if that was the case. Yes, back in the day for Dickie V. So here's hoping that he's better. Anything else, boys? Again, Matt Zemek is in the West. Follow him at Matt Zemek, Zemek. Trojanswire.com is the USA Today USC Trojans website covering them. Love his insight here on college basketball coast to coast. Do we have anything else to go over? Powers and I are on opposite sides of the aisle in this political season with Memphis and UAB coming up at 2 Eastern time Sunday. Your UAB Blazers, my Memphis Tigers. Memphis puke-worthy performance the other night with Wichita State. Will they be better against a UAB team that can go up and down? Your Blazers can go up and down, Mr. Powers.
They just won a game down here at USF last week.
Stand by for that game before the NFL games on Sunday. Memphis, UAB, 2 Eastern time, 1 Central time from Memphis.
Matt Zemek, January 26th. Who's the best team west of the Mississippi?
College basketball, who do you have? West of the Mississippi, who would you say? It's got to pause for a moment.
Pound for pound, who's the best team out west?
Yeah, probably Houston.
Okay.
Because that would actually count. Very good on the geography.
That.
I would say until what we saw today, Oregon might deserve to be in that category. Let us not forget Oregon has a win over Alabama out of the conference. But Oregon takes that slip, and they've had a couple of losses now in the Big Ten, including Purdue beating them at home. That's another one to keep an eye on.
Just curious
as well. Anything else, boys? I know we have the NFL tomorrow with the Eagles and the Commanders, and then yet again it's the Bills and the Chiefs playing for the 4th straight year in the playoffs. Are we looking at a possible three-peat for the Kansas City Chiefs? They got to get there first. For the Super Bowl, for Super Bowl 59. Any final thought on that, guys, before we depart on the college basketball here this evening?
Buffalo gets it done tomorrow.
Wow, Buffalo in the upset. I have said all week, Matt Zemek, that I believe the one of the two that can pull the upset on the road is Washington. Do you disagree? Do you think it's Buffalo like Jason Powers says? Do you think it's chalk, that it's Chiefs-Eagles?
I'm not supremely confident about the outcomes of either of these games. Like, we don't know how healthy Jalen Hurts is, and we know that Jaden Daniels, can light it up. So like, I would not be stunned if it's Bills Commanders, but if you ask me who's going to win, I would lean toward the home teams. That's the more likely outcome, but no outcome would really shock me. I'm just going to say that not having the Lions playing for the Super Bowl at home, that takes some of the starch out of the day. That was setting up to be an epic story, and the possibility of a Bills-Lions Super Bowl with one long-suffering team guaranteed to win its first. This weekend. I mean, hey, Bills-Chiefs is it's Ali Frazier of the NFL, but this weekend could have been so much better if the Lions had won. And no offense to any DC sports fans. It's just in terms of a great storyline, a great pair of games, the Lions being there in the NFC title game would have made the day a lot bigger on a national level.
You go back in the history of the Redskins, now the Commanders. They were so good for so long. They haven't been in the Super Bowl since 1991, if they get there. The Eagles were just there with the Chiefs 3 years ago. If they get there,
Yeah, Eagles Chiefs, we just had it, and they've been really, really good the past 4 years. Like, that would be Snoozeville.
And the
national level.
The Bills also have not been in the Super Bowl since 1993. By the way, happy birthday and a shout out to Marv Levy, the 99-year-old. Here we go again. 99-year-old Buffalo Bills coach, still living, celebrating 99th birthday earlier this week. And can the Bills get back to the Super Bowl just like they did with Marv Levy? Stay tuned.
I got one more nugget for everybody.
Please.
I know next Sunday won't be a big day for football. That's an off week, but there is the Pro Bowl going on.
It's a big day for one of the guys on this panel on college basketball coast to coast. Continue.
It's a nugget. I'm not going to give it away. There might be a connection between the Pro Bowl and college basketball coast to coast next week. You got to watch.
Oh, you can't just leave them hanging here. You're not going to be able to be with me next week.
Maybe not. I'm not sure.
I don't think you are, because you're getting ready to work the Pro Bowl's flag football game with the NFC and the AFC in Orlando. Brother Powers, good luck with that, and it's well-deserved. Well-deserved.
With Matt Zemek, with your boy Peyton and Eli.
Peyton and Eli are the coaches of that flag football game, so Powers is going to be in the middle of all that.
Check it out. You got to watch the Pro Bowl a little bit.
Love it.
Week.
All right,
okay,
boys,
I'll definitely for that.
Yeah, we got to put that down. For the Pro Bowl next week, in between week for the Super Bowl. Boys, we have been here a while. Thanks to Tyler Jones earlier in the program. Again, follow Jason Powers at JPO Sports, the Powers on Sports podcast. Love him on college basketball coast to coast. Also love Matt Zemek, Zemek, at Matt Zemek. Are you up in the middle of the night watching U.S. Open? It's not so much middle of the night for you out in the West.
Right, how about
U.S.
that?
Open final, right? From
Australian Open.
Right?
Australia.
Or Australian Open final coming up in a few hours. Matt's all over the tennis.
Yeah. Who you got, Sinner or you got Zverev?
Slightly Sinner, but I think it's anyone's match to take, because Zverev's looked really good, and he had to play just one set in the semis. So, like, he's fresh. He could go. He can play 5 hours if he needs to. So it's pretty even. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But I've been in Seattle.
How about Madison Keys, too, by the way, with a great effort last night to beat Sabalenka.
Storybook. Pure storybook, Hollywood, just pushes the boulder up the hill, and the boulder always rolls back down the hill.
Good for her.
But no, Madison Keys finally gets over the hump. Just a classic sports story. That was awesome.
Good for her.
How about we have sat here long enough that we've not only covered college basketball, we've not only covered the NFL. We began the show with Tyler Jones bemoaning his Kansas Jayhawks, and I mentioned again to the audience that Jason Powers was with me for the JV basketball earlier today with Riley and Abby Rives. That seems like it was last week, Powers, but it was earlier today.
It was yesterday.
It was technically yesterday now that we've crossed midnight in the East and it's Sunday. But we had a blast with that. Boys, I always appreciate hanging with you on college basketball coast to coast on all the platforms. Twitter at CBB Coast to Coast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Help us out. Hit the like button there on the YouTube channel, College Basketball Coast to Coast, where the video lives. Social media, Facebook, and also in podcast form, wherever you get podcasts, all the way through March, all the way to the Final Four. Jason, have a great Sunday. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Matt Zemek, same thing. Thanks to Tyler Jones as well. Boys, great stuff on college basketball coast to coast. Good night.